opportunity to get to talk to everyone about my story and to maybe help inspire others to kind of work through trauma or to figure out how to help other individuals work through their trauma as well. So a little bit about me. I met Denise in my undergrad. We had cultural competence, and that remains my favorite class from undergrad ever. I remember almost every single day from it. It was the best. I feel like I got the most out of that class than any other class in undergrad. It was,
Thank you.
oh yes, 100% fantastic instructor, fantastic teacher. So currently I work in housing in a small private institution in Western North Carolina. I focus on the first year residents, so I coordinate everything from first year events, from move in, move out. I supervise the RAs, so I'm working one on one with a lot of students, especially first year students. And it's really, really nice because I get to help students from all different backgrounds, all different walks of life come to this institution, find their fit, and most importantly, find how they can use their strengths and their stories to impact the community. So I've been here for like 2 months and I absolutely love it. It is fantastic. This is
Well, yay for having a job in the pandemic. So good,
right.
good job, Zach.
I tried for so long and then I finally got here. So it's
And
been
it
great.
probably exactly where you're supposed to be.
Yes, that's how it feels. Is like I went through a lot of like rejection from other institutions and like, oh man, like this really sucks. And then this came up and it's like, oh wow, I'm like for sure supposed to be here.
Yeah, that's a good feeling. Let me just remind everybody, because I forgot to say it at the start, if you'll put your name in the chat for us to have record keeping purposes. Thank you for that. So, Zach, whatever I talked to you a little bit about what we talk about today, and obviously whatever you feel comfortable sharing. But so you start as early as you want, 15 to 20 minutes with the details that you feel comfortable sharing because you come from a trauma background as a child.
Yes.
We talk a lot on this call about adverse childhood experiences and those original 10 things and our ACEs scores and how having a high ACE score changes the way we think and interact in our relationships, learning and behavior. So whatever part of your story that you'd like to share with us, we would feel considered a privilege to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, I see a couple names in there that I'm very familiar with. So hi, it's so good to see y'all's names. I would like to start off by kind of giving like a trigger warning. I'm a very open book, and there's not anything that I don't talk about. Anywhere from like sexual assault to religious trauma to neglect. I've dealt with all of that, and I have no problem sharing any part of it. So if y'all feel any uncomfortability, feel free to ask questions. Feel free to step back. But I also kind of want to challenge you to go into that and look at it from a different perspective and different lens so that you can help others who have also dealt with this if they come to you coming out about their trauma. So to start off, I always knew that my like childhood was not the best at all. So I lived with my biological mother, biological brother, and biological grandmother up until I was 11. Throughout those 11 years, it was very difficult. I never really felt like I fit in with my family, fit in with like other students. I was one of those like weird kids who would just go off into the woods for like hours on end and just like chill by myself. Would always hang out with video games, play video games, stuff like that. But from a young age, I had to learn how to cook for myself. So like make pizza rolls, make macaroni and cheese, stuff like that at the age of like 7 or 8. We grew up very, very poor. So oftentimes in the winter we didn't have any running water and I would end up missing a lot of school for a lot of different reasons. Mostly just my biological mother didn't neglected us, neglected me and my biological brother up until we were, up until I was 11. And the story of that is my biological mother suffered from a lot of mental health issues, specifically bipolar disorder and depression. And there was an attempt, a suicide attempt, that I was actually the individual who called in. We had two landlines. One was a white phone and one was a black phone, and we would make all of our like serious calls on the white phone. And I remember that day she asked for the white phone, so I was like, oh, this is interesting. So I'm gonna do that, like star 69, and listening to the conversation. And she was talking to her therapist about how she was not going to be coming back, and essentially saying, hey, this is a suicide attempt. So I immediately called the police, and they came over and escorted her to the hospital to get her stomach pumped because she OD'd on some of her medications, or attempted to OD on some of her medications. And that was a big shock to me because at the time I was 11 years old. I don't know many other 11-year-olds who's had to call the police on their mother for a suicide attempt, right? So that was, it's really weird because in some aspects I know that's not normal, but in my life at the time, that's all I knew. And it would be really weird to hear some of my like peers and friends talk about like their familial lives, because it completely clashed with mine. It was not the same whatsoever. So I'm like, oh, like you have a dad? That's really interesting. Like, what's that like? Like, oh, your like mom takes you to places and like cooks for you? Can't relate. So I knew from a very young age that like my story was very, very different, but that's all I knew, so it was also normal to me. Personally, a lot of my trauma comes from my first foster family. It was in Wilkesboro, and I was there for about 2 to 2.5 years, around that area. And the biggest thing was religious trauma and conflict with my identity. From a young age, I knew that I identify as a homosexual male, so that disconnect with my identity and their religious values was incredibly tense. The very first day I met them, they were like, do you know who Jesus is? Like, talk to me about your story. I'm like, who is that? Is that like our president or something? Religion was not a big thing in my family up until I was 11, and put into foster care. So from a very young age, they kind of just poured it into me without me getting acclimated. So they took me to church every single Sunday, and it was just really, really hard to sit there and to listen about how like my identity and who I am as a person is wrong. So that was really, really hard to just listen to, and to listen to people who I thought was supposed to take care of me and supposed to like give me resources to grow, be like, you're going to go to hell for this. Like, you need to change. I remember when they discovered that aspect of my identity, they took me out of school the next day, and took me to several different churches in the area to talk to the pastors, to try and like pray the gay away, try to get me to like repent and all that. And that's where a lot of the trauma comes from. I'm still healing from that religious trauma as well as that emotional abuse, because it was just like, because I ended up suffering from depression with that and severe anxiety, where I was just so anxious to go into a church. I always felt like I would sweat profusely. It was really gross. But it was just hard to go into this place that I just didn't feel welcome. Even if I was told that I was welcome, I didn't feel it. And now every time I interact with like religious individuals, I always get scared to talk to them about my identity or to say, hey, this is my partner. Hey, like, this is my identity, because I'm so scared that it's going to go back to that time of trauma. If
Right.
that makes sense.
It does make sense.
Yeah. Also, if y'all have any questions, I know I talk fast and I talk a lot. So definitely slow me down. If there's anything else you want to hear, I'm happy to tell it. Um, I think the
They're used to
hardest,
that with me, Zach. I talk fast and I don't take a breath, so they're used to it. If they want to
exactly.
ask,
I
if
think
they
that's why
want
we
to ask
connect
us,
so fast.
they'll
Yeah, I
they'll
think
put
that's
it.
why we connect so well, is because we just talk at each other so much.
Yeah, talk fast.
Yes, absolutely. Um, there was another thing that I wanted to talk about. Hold on, give me 1 second. Um, living with my biological family, um, there was a lot of also just physical abuse as well, from like being not fed to being like spanked and hit and just like left in a car on a hot day. So all of that is a factor. I'm not sure where I was going with that. I had something in my head for that, but it left as I was talking. So
When we started, you mentioned physical abuse, religious trauma, and sexual assault.
yeah,
For
a
the
lot
three
of
that you
the
mentioned.
a lot of the sexual assaults that came from me was actually my biological brother. Um, Thinking back, I think it was just a power move for him. He suffered from bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, um, and I think it was his way of like gaining control in any situation was that. So that's another thing. I still have like that trauma with having no control of that kind of situation, and it has somewhat affected me in my relationships going forward, especially as a gay man. Um, it's, I mean, it's ironic in a way, because I'm like, hello, but it's affected my like previous relationship. Thank the Lord I am in a relationship now where that is completely respected and healing, like that healing process has like started. I am also 24, so I'm very young when it comes to like that trauma, and still trying to heal from like over a decade ago. So
Right. Well, and you're talking, because I've done this too. I come from a history of trauma, and you're talking about the intellectual process of why
yeah,
did he do that? Where was that motivated from?
yeah,
And
it's like
so we kind of
let's
do that to detach ourselves, but that doesn't begin to touch the emotional
no, and it's
repercussions.
hard because it's that control piece. Like I need to have control over my own emotions, and I need to have control over like the intellect in that situation. Like I need to know why.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that knowledge is that control. I know that may not still be the healthiest, and I'm doing my absolute best to work at that. I know that's still something that I need to continue to work on, but it's a way that I cope. And I'll talk about other coping skills that I do later on. I do a lot.
Um, One of the things that's happened to me in these Wednesday conversations is I have these epiphanies and revelations, and I haven't been prepared for that. But I am obsessive about needing to understand why with every single thing that goes on in my world. And it never occurred this instant, the why of all, and that's
Absolutely.
somehow a control. So thank you for
Yeah.
that insight, Zach. Yay.
Yeah, you're
Um,
welcome. I'm
so
also if y'all do enneagrams or anything like that, I'm a three. No, I am a two wing three. So I am a helper and a doer. So I'm also a green when it comes to true colors. So like I'm that intellectual logistics person who like needs to understand each process, each logistics, why it occurs, how it occurs, and how that impacts me and how I can use that to benefit myself and others. But with 2 and 3, it's very much feeling and doing. So I have all these emotions and I have to utilize those emotions to do my work. And all of my coworkers are like, you are definitely a 2 and 3 for sure. It's very fun.
Somebody put a question in the chat about 2 questions. How did you
Okay.
feel being labeled as a foster child? And the second one's kind of going to be our second part of our thing about the people and events that helped you build a healthy life. So we'll come back to that one. But can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about how you felt with that label?
Um, it was really hard because where I was placed, as soon as they saw a foster child, they put me on a blacklist. So they were like, you need to watch out for this kid because he's a foster kid. I, to this day, cannot hurt a fly without feeling remorse about it. So I did my best to never like act out, but there was that self-fulfilling prophecy that they had on me that labeled me as a blacklist student as a foster child. So it's like, oh, this kid has abandonment issues, he has anger issues, he has no control, he has like no ability to like keep thought process going. So it was just really hard to see all these teachers who were supposed to motivate me positively just be like, you're like a blacklist kid. It was very hard because I will never forget this. When I was in the 7th grade, there was a group of girls who would pick on me for it. Like, it was brutal. They would be like, can't wait for you to go to your next foster home because like these people aren't going to keep you. So good luck. And it was just hard to listen to that. And they had one guy friend. He came up to me and he was like, I am so sorry that you're dealing with this. I am a foster kid too, but I don't want anyone to know. So like, don't say anything. So he and I became best friends, like secretly, because I was suffering all of these titles and going through the system as like a blacklist kid, going to IEPs and stuff like that. And I didn't want that for him, so I did my best to like protect him. That gave me some sort of control over another person to help that person. So I did what I could with that. I hope that answers your question.
I've never heard the term blacklist kids. You may have come up with that on your own, but I
Yeah, I
think
came up with that on my own.
that is a powerful expression. And I think about all the children that I've worked with in my 30 years as a school social worker who would consider themselves to be that. And that's definitely something I'm going to keep in mind from now on.
Yeah. And I mean, as me, as like a lovable, great person, I mean, you know me, a couple others here know me. Like, when you look at me, you would not think blacklist kid or like the troublemaker. But that's how I was labeled because I was a foster kid. Um, they always like they would talk to me. Some of the teachers would try to like dumb things down for me because they thought I didn't know any of the material, when in reality I was a super smart kid. I got all A's in school. But it was just like, I know what you're saying to me. Like, you don't have to dumb down. Like, just because I'm in foster care doesn't mean I'm any less capable of like being an AIG student. Of course, I didn't have the same resources as these other students did, but that doesn't mean that I don't have the capability and capacity for that. So it's just incredibly invalidating to have like individuals look at you and put this label on you because of an experience that you had that doesn't really mean anything when it comes to like your capability. Like, I have a master's degree. and a bachelor's degree, and I was a foster kid. So, like, all foster children have the capability of doing such great things. It's just people put these awful labels on them and create that self-fulfilling prophecy that ultimately keeps them from reaching their goals.
Some people know this about me too, and that I had a horrible time in school, barely got through, lots of trauma playing out in a small town, and everybody knew us and knew who we were and what we were, and barely got out of high school. Took 7 years to get my bachelor's, quit twice, dropped out for 2 years, then went back and got my master's degree, and now I'm getting my PhD, and my chair will say to me something about a highly motivated student, and the first time she did it, I literally turned around and looked behind me because I was like, who is she talking about? Like, that identity was so not even what I could relate to. It was shocking to me. So I could,
100%.
yeah, that identity that gets put on us because of what people perceive our experiences to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, powerful stuff. So
It's
yeah, I think you did answer that question. And so before I move you into the people and events that helped you shape your life positively, is there anything else you wanted to add about your background?
No, I think I portrayed my background pretty well.
Okay, if you
Or to
think
the
of something,
fullest that I have in my
yeah,
head right now.
if you think of something, we can come back to it.
Oh, for sure.
So Jessica's second question, which is kind of the second, yes, Jessica.
Hi, Jessica.
Which is my second question as well, and that is, what helped you get through the traumas that you experienced, specifically people and events that you can think of that helped you reshape your life?
Yeah, there are 4 people that have really helped me um, kind of work through my trauma. That is my adoptive social worker, my parents, and my current partner. So my adoptive social worker, when I was going through the motions with my first foster family who wanted to adopt me to like change my name and to like see if that would make me straight, no, but really looked out for me and really was like, I have a family for you to go to where you're going to be like taken care of. So, and that's my parents. I have 2 dads, and I will never be ashamed of saying that. They really helped me through my life. Dave and Joel, great people. I came to live with them on their anniversary, actually, August 7th of 2011. And like 6 months later, I was adopted. So it took 6 months. On March 26th, 2012, I was adopted, and that really started the healing process.
So you went to live with them like exactly 10 years ago, a week, like
Yeah,
10 years by, we missed it by
we
a
just
week.
celebrated our 10-year anniversary of me being in the family.
Super.
Yeah, it's been great. It's been a long 10 years. Wow, it's been a long 10 years. But they really helped me. So the way I love to explain it is that I am an artist and my life is a canvas. My first foster family tried to paint my canvas for me to the best of their abilities and what they wanted. While my parents, gave me the resources, they gave me the paint, they gave me the paintbrushes, and they gave me the resources and techniques to paint my own. That's the way that I like to explain it. So they really gave me like every single thing that I needed to like grow as a person, to help through my trauma. They never forced me to go to church. They were like, we want you to go at least once, just so that you can see that like this one experience doesn't like categorize everyone. So like, don't let these people like taint your view on others just because of their identity. And that's something that I still need to like think about when I'm interacting with like religion and religious people, and especially in churches. So that's been really good. They let me choose my major in college. They said whatever you do, as long as you have an outlet and as long as you're doing well, we want you to succeed no matter what. So I got my bachelor's in psychology. Had no idea what I wanted to do with that, like at all. And then I did peer advising for that academic. Um, yes, Jessica, I'm still crying. Um, but I worked as an academic advisor, like a peer advisor for the psych department at App. And that really helped me realize that I wanted to do that for like other students because I got to listen to their story. I got to help work through some of the stuff that they were going on and how I can help them succeed in their careers. So I got my master's in higher education, administration, and leadership. I'm using that for housing now, but hopefully I'll get back into academic advising. That's my goal. But I would say my parents are the number one people who really helped me. What was so nice about them is that they gave me like complete and total control of like when I wanted to start my healing process, how I wanted to go about healing. Every now and then they will give me tough loves, like do this, it'll help. Sometimes I'm responsive to that. Other times I'm like, I'm not ready, back off. Other times I'm like, you know what, you're right, let's do it. And then the fourth person is my current partner, Jeremy. He is great. He is extremely religious, so he is very active in his church. He's an acolyte. So he goes to church every single Sunday. However, he's like, you don't have to go with me. I just want you to come once so that you can see this part of my life. And maybe that can like help you start with your healing process. So it's very nice to have that person listen to me with my response or my trauma with religion as a religious person, so he can see my perspective and I can get a safe perspective from a religious individual to kind of start with my healing process.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we just celebrated our anniversary the other day. So,
yeah. So interesting, the things we get sent on our journey.
Absolutely, it is very, very interesting. I always thought I'm never gonna date a religious guy, and then here he comes strolling along, and it's like, "What's up?" And I'm like, "That's the one." Anyways,
that's very cool. One of the things that we say a lot is, and you've heard me say it, the number one thing to offset trauma is relationship with a positive, consistent, caring adult.
Yes.
Do you find in your experiences that that's been true for you?
Yes, I've seen that in Jessica. I've seen that in you. I've seen that in my parents, and I've seen that in Jeremy. Some of the times, in a lot of individuals who have experienced trauma, they want that so bad, but they don't actively seek it because they can sometimes be afraid of it. Because whenever I was with my parents and they were showing me like love and compassion, nothing but support, I was like, this is a trap. Something's really fishy here. I don't know what, but I'm not vibing with it. But ultimately I buckled down and had to kind of allow myself to flow into that uncomfortability in order to heal. Cause like the biggest thing, and I know it's hard for a lot of individuals with trauma to hear this, but like the first step into healing is to really just dive into that trauma, is to really just like take it all in and start the healing process. That starting is the 100% hardest part.
I've talked in previous conversations about my spouse is probably the first positive, consistent, caring person I had beside my grandparents. And it was a couple of years of having panic attacks because someone was being nice to me, and that was so foreign to me. And my brain would be going, you're safe here. It's okay for you to be in this relationship where someone's being nice and kind to you. But my physical reactions were like, run, hide, don't sit here, literally having to sit on my hands to not go somewhere because
Yeah,
it felt so uncomfortable to me.
yeah, yeah,
And
that
so
can.
and
I
when you said,
remember,
go
yeah,
ahead.
I remember when I was with Jeremy one day, it was probably one of the best days I've ever had with him. But at the end of the day, I was laying in bed and I had a full scale panic attack. And I was like, I'm not okay. But like, I knew I was safe. Like, in my head, I knew that this person was really there for me and he really wanted to help me through like everything. Took me where I was at, which was a mess, and was ready to help me like find the pieces I need to put it back together. And in my head, I was like, this person's great, but at the same time, I was like, run, get out, save yourself.
Save
So
yourself.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it's really interesting how that can happen.
Well, and I love that you said this is going to be really scary for people from trauma to hear, but
Yeah,
building a relationship is an important step because I think you're right. I think for those of us who are from trauma, hearing you need to be able to sit in a safe relationship, like literally strikes panic and fear.
yeah, and it's also hard to say, but or hard to tell people this, but you're like you have to do that. Like, I mean, obviously do it when you're ready, of course, because there are still times when I'm not ready to do something, but I know deep in my heart, like, if I'm going to start this healing process, I need to do it. Because if I don't do it, it's not going to happen. And I don't want to live in that trauma, but at the same time, I need to start exposing myself to that again so that that healing process can like actually start. I've been taking little steps. I've gone to church with Jeremy twice now, and what's so nice, but was also very scary, was he's talked to his rector about me and my situation, which I gave him permission to do, so like it's fine. And she like saw me on the first day, and after the sermon, she came up to me and was like, you're Zach, right? And I said, yes. She said, I am so proud of you for being able to sit through this. I know that was not hard, that was not easy for you. She said, wow, wow. Like, from like a rector or a person in the church, never heard that before. So it was just like, holy crap. Like, my parents are right, Jeremy's right. Like, there are people out here that like will take my full identity and like celebrate it in the church. So like, holy crap! I'm like,
Powerful
I
stuff.
can, yeah, like I can start this process. So I went with him to church last weekend as well. So and that was also still a good time.
Oh,
I
good.
wasn't
I'm
able to
glad
sit
you.
through the entire thing. I sat through most of it, but I had to get up. But it's those little steps that we gotta take, right?
Yeah. Well, and as you're talking about that, I'm thinking, and it has to be with somebody that you're safe with. I think my illusion at the beginning of you have to build relationships with that knowledge was, oh, I just do that with whoever. And one of the next questions we're getting to is your relationship with, or does it exist with your biological family? And we've talked a lot in the Wednesday conversations about, do you still have a relationship with your biological family or the people that you experience trauma? Do you not? The continuum of, yes, still have a regular relationship to no relationship at all, and everything in between. And there's just people in my family who perpetrated my trauma that it doesn't matter if I'm a healthy person now. Like you're never going to have a healthy relationship with those people, and you have to know who those people are and what the extent of that relationship can be. So
Yeah.
they still have to be safe adults for you to be able to build those relationships.
Yeah, I consider myself to be a safe adult. I feel like overall I'm pretty healthy. I know that there are things that I still need to work on as an individual, to help with my trauma, and I'm doing my best to make those steps. But with my biological family, with my biological brother, absolutely not. He will never know anything about me other than I'm alive. That's it. With my biological grandmother, I'm not sure if she's still alive or not, because at a younger age, I was like, I don't want to speak with any of them. They abandoned me. So like, no, not a chance. But as I grew up, I started realizing that like my biological mother knew that she wasn't a good mother, and I will always say the 100% best thing that she has ever done for me was put me up for adoption.
Mm.
Because she knew that like I wasn't gonna have a good life with her, so she was like, you know what, give him to someone who he will have a good life with. And then in grad school, actually, we started to reconnect a little bit, and things were going well until she asked me if I remembered my name. And I was like, yeah, my name is Zackery. And she's like, no, baby, your real name. And I said, no, pass. So I really did my best to rekindle that relationship and to create a healthy relationship with my source of trauma, as part of my own healing process. And I came to the conclusion that that is not what I needed whatsoever. So I cut it off. So I do not have contact with any of my biological family. And something that I say is that family is not always like genetics and blood. My parents are my parents. Whether they're my DNA or not, they took me in when I had very little. They took me in for me. That's all that matters. And that's my perspective. I know other individuals have different perspectives, and whatever your perspective is completely valid. It's just like, for me, I want to adopt someone. I don't want to have my own. I want to adopt, to show these children in foster care that like there are people out there that want them for them. So yeah, I want it to come full circle.
Yeah, because because y'all think of your own titles. Your title that you gave me was Finding Family. And
Yeah,
so creating that for yourself in a way that feels healthy and safe for you.
yeah.
Um, and so, how brave of you to try with your biological family, and how brave
Mm-hmm.
of you to stop trying. Both of those
Yeah.
things were really super
Thank you for
brave.
that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Wow. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Bravery
that.
both ways.
Yeah.
So anything else you'd like to say about any people or events? I think you detailed all the ones that you mentioned at the beginning. Um,
Yeah.
anything else about that before we go to staying healthy?
I also want to give a shout out to Jessica. She's helped me work a lot with being able to speak my story to other foster care parents, so that they can get a perspective from a foster child, and how that these parents can better support these children from different identities. So shout out to Jessica. She's great.
Yeah, Jessica. If you don't know, Jessica Weinberger is one of the only foster care social worker at DSS. So, um, all right. So let's talk about staying healthy and well. You've talked about building healthy relationships and being brave and doing your own healing. Um, at the beginning of these, I said, what are the things that you do to stay well? And then I've gotten really into, and how do you know when to do those things? Because so many of us have our lists,
Mm-hmm.
but I think there's a big disconnect for some people between the list and putting it into practice. So,
Yeah.
what do you do to stay well? And how do you know when it's time to do those things?
So, some of y'all have probably heard some of my little art jargon and art metaphors that I've thrown in there. I am an artist. I do a lot of pour painting. And the reason that I do that is so I actually started my senior year of undergrad. So, like a couple years ago, three, I think. Oh my God. Wow. That's wild. I was an intern for the Western Youth Network, and there was a rainy day, and we just started doing art projects. And I was like, "Wow, this is so nice!" Like I never thought that I could do art. Like I was one of those like little thinker dudes. Like art was was like a foreign concept to me. So I started doing art, and then I started looking on Instagram and stuff like that, and like seeing all these like beautiful like art pieces, and like I want to do that. I want to try that. So something that I tried was after a breakup, actually, before I met Jeremy. I got a whole bunch of like different colors on my Floetrol, and I tried to pick colors that I was really connecting with at the time and pick colors that I wasn't. So what I would do is, like, if I was feeling really sad or really down, I would pick a vibrant background, and really cold and darker colors for like the negative space, um, and try to make something beautiful out of these awful feelings that I was feeling. And there were times that like I made these pieces and they were like hideous to look at. But at the same time, I wanted to look at these and I wanted to keep them because like that's how I was feeling. Like whether it was good or bad, I need to understand that like these feelings are valid and I need to feel these for a reason. So it's just like looking at this piece and it's like, why don't I like this? Like, how can I keep this in the back of my mind for next time when I'm feeling this way? And something that helps me to remind myself when to do my art is when people ask me, like, hey, are you stressed? So I'm like, okay, so obviously I'm dealing with something, because a lot of the times we'll like go through life when we're stressed and like not actually think about it and not step back to like talk about our stressors, talk about our trauma, think about it. Because I mean, like I had like 600 students moving in a week. Like, do y'all really think I'm like thinking about my trauma or thinking about my stressors? Absolutely not. So it's when people ask me if I'm doing okay and like if I need support, that's when I'm like, I should probably start painting again. So yeah, I do a lot of art, and when people ask me if I'm struggling, that's when I start back.
One of the very first ones of these that we did, because we hear so much about self-care, and I try not to use that term and talk about wellness instead, but Mary McKinney, who I think is on here, talks about relational care and
Yeah,
taking better care of each other, all of us together, which I
yeah,
really like the concept of. And so it's interesting that you say when somebody else asks me if I'm okay, that's my clue that I
that
may
like,
need to
oh,
do
maybe I'm
something.
not. Like let's like dive into that. And Jeremy, every now and then Jeremy will text me and be like, check in. And like I'll give him like, oh, I'm fine. He's like, not good enough. So he like, and it's so nice to have a partner that will like sit you down and be like, shut up, tell me how you're feeling. Like, I don't want to, I'm fine, I don't care. Like, what are you thinking? So it's very nice to have him like sit me down and like make me like, not make me talk about it, but like really encourage me to talk about it so that I can work through it. Because a lot of the times when I get overly stressed, I will get like super frustrated easily. So that's another thing, is when he sees that, he'll be like, we need to have a check-in. So
I like that. Have a check-in, not you have to
yeah.
talk to me, but just a check-in. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so you have a commitment at 1 that I promised you I'd let you go a few minutes early so you can get your head right for that. So in thinking about, I guess one thing I'd like to hear from you is there something that you would like to say to people? I just think about all your experiences going through foster care and the
Yeah.
labels that you feel like you had and the lack of positive, consistent, caring adults. Like, if there's people on the call who are dealing with kids who are currently in trauma, is there something that you would like to say to help them know how to hold a safe space for those kids or adults even?
For the adults who are experienced or who are living with trauma, something that I want to say to them is, don't let that hurt child make your grown-up decisions.
Oh my gosh, let me write that down. Go ahead, you keep talking. I'm right.
Yeah, so don't let that hurt child make up your grown-up decisions. And for people who are helping foster children go through that, let them paint their own story. Let them make the mistakes that they need to so that they can learn. I know a lot of the times, sometimes we will try to shelter shelter like children, and like prevent them from making these like mistakes that we made, because we don't want that same thing for them. But ultimately, that's how they're going to grow. They need to experience some of these heartfelt hardships in order to feel like that true connection and true joy. So like you can't feel joy without experiencing sadness. So that's something that I would like to say. So
Both of those are very powerful things. If you would like to ask Zach a question, he's got another minute or two. If you would like to tell him something, if you'll type that in the chat, I'll copy and paste all of this to you, Zach, so that you can read it when you have time to do it.
Okay.
Really appreciate your time with us today. You've always had, since I've known you, the most open heart and the sharpest brain. And so I really appreciate you taking some time to be with us, especially since you're not even in our community anymore and
I
have
will always be a part of the community in heart.
gone off to do your own things. One last question. What else could we do on a community level to help intervene with or support kids in similar situations?
Advocate for them. So when you hear people talking about foster children in any sort of capacity, like help educate them to understand that these children are just as capable, and to give them that kind of space to grow. So as a community, I don't know what capacities all of y'all are in, but if y'all are in like the school system and y'all hear counselors talking about it, open up the conversation to like, why do we have these labels for these students? Are there actual patterns that we see in this? And if there are, how can we change our language to be more supportive and person first rather than label first? So that's something that I would like to challenge you all, is to think about some of the way you or others may be talking about a specific identity or a specific group, and try to change that language to make it person first. That's my biggest philosophy, is person first language and person first mindset.
Got it. I wrote that down. We'll put that on our Facebook posts as some insights. I'm gonna let you go, Zach. You got things to get ready for. It was so good to see you again and spend time with you.
Thank you all so much for giving me the space to share my story with you guys. I hope it inspired you all to kind of dig deeper into individuals' trauma so that you can help them.
Yeah. Well, good luck with your job. I hope that you continue to love it. If I can ever do anything for you, let me know.
Absolutely, 100%. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Have a